Roelof Botha, who was on stage yesterday with Mike during the fireside chat. Was that painless or painful?
Painless.
Wow, you got off easy.
I know. I don't know why Mike's going easy on me, but I won't complain.
You must have something on him. So for the 5 people who may not know, Roelof is a general partner with Sequoia Capital. Shot out of the gate with YouTube very early on. You got your first big win out of the way. And what are some of the other companies that you're in now that our audience might be familiar with?
People probably familiar with Square, the payments company. That's Jack Dorsey's next company. A company called Evernote. Tumblr is a very popular service that we invested in late last year.
Hopefully our audience knows all 3 of those names. Otherwise, they need to go back and do some
company.
reading on TechCrunch. So when you were walking off stage with Mike, you showed him a really interesting chart that I want to talk about that basically shows Sequoia's exits over the last 18 months. Now, a lot of people in the Valley say, well, Sequoia's no longer getting every single consumer win because they didn't get Twitter and they didn't get Facebook, and they name about 4 companies. But what this graphic shows is that, you know, the venture ecosystem is more than 4 hot companies, basically.
I think so. We obviously regret having missed a couple of important companies, but we continue to work very hard at the companies. We are an investor, and at some point you can't change history, and so instead of looking through the rearview mirror, we want to look through the windshield. And
you haven't gone the route of getting into the late stage secondary, let's get a chunk of the company now. You're focusing on other companies, right?
We're focusing on other companies. You know, we're very excited about the exits that we've seen over the last 18 months. You know, there've been recent IPOs. We've had several M&A incidents over the last 18 months. And then there are a bunch of private companies that we're very excited about, and we think what we can do distinctively is to be of service to them to build enduring companies.
Right. So you were showing on this graphic that not counting LinkedIn, which you guys were a very early investor in, Sequoia's had $20 billion in exits in the last 18 months.
Correct.
And our audience has probably heard of Green Dot, LinkedIn, AdMob, and not a lot of the other ones.
Probably
Ton in
not.
China, one in India.
Yes.
And a couple other in other countries too,
Yeah,
correct?
a couple of companies out of Israel as well, like Jaja, which was acquired in early 2010. So we've had, I think there were about a dozen IPOs over that time frame, about 20 M&A or mergers and acquisitions, very nicely split across our various geographies. And across various sectors, financial services, systems companies like Isilon that was acquired by EMC, software companies like Clearwell Systems that was acquired by Symantec in the last week. We just continue to be active across a whole range of companies.
So what do you think that people are missing when they, you know, just fixate on consumer web? I mean, because again, I mean, and TechCrunch is as guilty of this as anyone. Most of the companies on that list, we probably didn't even write about the exit. Was it a conscious decision that you guys made to not be so focused on it? Was it just companies you happen to be in? I mean, what's the secret?
Just happens to be companies we were in. So Sequoia has a history of investing, as we think about it, up and down the full IT value stack. Anything from components to systems to software companies and then services. And so obviously within services, that includes internet and consumer internet services companies. But to us, that's just one layer of the value chain. And obviously there's a lot of activity around that. And I think part of the reason it's very recognizable for consumers is those are products and services that we all know of. And so it's very easy for us to think about a Facebook or a Twitter or a Tumblr or a Dropbox or a YouTube. You know, those are companies we were investors in. Because we all use services like that. There's actually an interesting story. I don't know if you know what happened. I hope this is true and not an urban myth.
Let's assume it is.
But Oracle faced this challenge early on in its life where the purchase orders started to get so large that eventually the CFOs of companies had to sign off on purchasing Oracle. And the challenge was, it was a very expensive piece of software, and the CFOs had no idea what Oracle was. And so from what I've gathered, there was a very deliberate decision made at Oracle to become a well-known consumer name. And so they started to get into sponsorships of stadiums.
So I wondered why Oracle has its ads in airports.
And companies like Cisco, et cetera, because they need that name recognition to be more widely known. Now, obviously, for some of the younger sort of infrastructure or storage or companies like that, it takes them a while before they can get to that scale. because they don't have that consumer brand recognition.
Interesting. I want to talk a little bit about international. I mean, people know I'm sort of obsessed with emerging markets. Mike calls it he considers it my drug habit that he has to put up with, that I keep flying off to other places and can't stop. This has been a massive change over the last 10 years in Silicon Valley. And when I first moved there in the late 90s, no one would invest outside of a day's drive, with the exception of maybe Israel, but you'd move the company to the valley. Now almost everyone, if they don't have an office somewhere, is doing deals. You guys have not only been incredibly aggressive, but have had a lot of great returns out of it. But I know that, you know, in all the markets, there's been sort of some turmoil as you try to get the model exactly right, changes in the structure, all of that. I think every firm has experienced it. What have you guys learned now, being several years into turning what was a local boutique business into an international business?
So I think the thing that we've learned is it's really a local business. Mm-hmm. It's not a global business. Mm-hmm.
So you didn't turn it into a global business.
Exactly. And I know it sounds a little oxymoronic to state it like that, but if you're going to be a distinctive investor in China, in India, in Israel, and in the US, you need to be very focused on servicing your customer, which is the entrepreneur, in that local geography. Obviously, there's a certain element of how do we learn from each other across the globe, because trends move across the world so quickly. There are probably more Groupon clones within a few months in China than they were in the US, just because news travels very, very quickly. And so we obviously try to leverage that sort of insight, but you have to be a distinctive local provider, which is why we don't fly around the world making investments in every single geography. We've been very selective about where we've chosen to open our offices.
And so are you still bullish on those three countries? Are you still bullish on Israel in particular? Returns have not been great over the last decade in Israel after sort of its wonder period of the 1990s. A lot of your brethren on Sand Hill Road have been pulling out or slowly kind of decreasing their commitment to Israel.
Our Israeli team have had spectacular returns. So if you
so you're still bullish on them?
We are. We just look at the sort of technology coming out of Israel. Very, very optimistic about the future.
Any other markets that you're looking at? Brazil, Indonesia, Russia, have you looked at those?
The door is open. We haven't made any commitment to any additional geography at this point. So and additional geographies might be additional, geographies in the United States for that matter. But I think we're very open-minded. But again, we've said no to so many things over the years. In the past, we have said no to Europe. We have said no to Russia. We have said no to Brazil. But that is in the past, and we're always open-minded to reconsider our decisions.
Now, I know a lot of entrepreneurs are in the audience and a lot of entrepreneurs are watching. Everyone kind of gets wrapped up in these sexy location-based services, badge companies. And I mean, part of what I want people to take away from this is, one of the most powerful firms in the world is seeing most of its returns sort of outside of the things that get written about on TechCrunch every day. What would be your advice to entrepreneurs who are maybe designing an infrastructure product, an enterprise product, something we were talking about, something in the the bio space yesterday, things that aren't going to get a TechCrunch headline but are solving real world problems?
I think they should just stick to their knitting. I think being authentic is probably the most important thing that an entrepreneur can do. So if they have a keen insight on a particular problem, address a large market opportunity, and have passion to pursue that, our doors are open to listen to them. I mean, so personally, in addition to the consumer internet companies I'm involved with and consumer mobile companies, I'm involved on behalf of Sequoia in a cloud infrastructure company with the founders of EC2, a bioinformatics company, as you pointed out, a consumer products company in Jawbone. So, the door is open for us to consider, all manner of technology-enabled companies.
I've been arguing to Mike that we should have just a hardware track of Disrupt. I want to see more hardware companies.
I think it'd be interesting.
Do you think hardware's making a comeback? I think Jawbone.
Jawbone is doing really well, and they released this wireless speaker called Jambox last December, which has done spectacularly. So very, very excited about the prospects for the company. I think part of the resurgence in hardware companies is now that you have mobile computing platforms, whether it's a smartphone or a tablet-like device, it creates a very interesting opportunity for peripheral products around that. So if you think back to Logitech maybe in 1990 or 1995, when you had this explosive growth in PC computing and all the peripherals you needed around that, something similar is going to happen around mobile. And I think design will matter a lot more because it's wearable. people will care about what these things look like for the same reason that Apple won, even though they
Right.
were pre-existing MP3 players. So I think that's part of why there's an interesting resurgence.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us, Roelof.